I'm calling this meeting to order. This is the Emeryville Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, September 27th at 6:30 p.m. We'll start with a roll call.
Commissioner Donaldson?
Here.
Commissioner Hidalgo has an excused absence this evening. Commissioner Keller?
Here.
Commissioner Thompson?
Here.
Commissioner Young?
Here.
Vice Chair Herrero?
Here.
And Chair Barrera has an excused absence this evening also. So we have a quorum of 5 commissioners present, and Vice Chair Herrero will preside.
Thank you, Charlie. All right, at this time, I want to ask the audience for any members of the public that'd like to comment on any matters within the purview of the commission that are not on tonight's agenda. All right, seeing none, we'll move on with approval of action minutes from the last meeting in August.
I have a comment.
Okay, Commissioner Thompson has a comment.
In the write-up regarding the study session, I don't think there was mention of eliminating the bus stop in the notes.
Eliminated bus stop?
Yeah, unless,
Halleck Street or?
yeah,
Char-
yeah.
You mean eliminating the bus stop at Harlan and 40th?
Yes.
Right, that was included in the staff presentation. This is just a kind of a summary of the commissioner's comments. Do you recall the commission had a specific comment about that?
Well, I was just trying to make sure that everything was covered in the conversation around the bike lane presentation, is that I believe that there was comment about the removal of that stop as well. And so I just wasn't sure if it should be noted in that section of the minutes as well.
Yes, I definitely supported removing that. I think a lot of people did.
Yes, I would agree, and I don't recall any members of the commission speaking against the removal of the bus stop. Is that correct?
I think I said I had no problems with it.
Okay.
I recalled that. If you were elderly, it'd be a spot that's there and you could use it. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Young.
All right, we'll add that note to that write-up.
All right, are there any more comments or amendments? All right.
Approval?
Second.
We have approval from Commissioner Keller, seconded by Commissioner Donaldson. Sorry.
That is without objection. All right, thank you.
All right, at this time, we're going to ask our director, Charlie, for a report.
All right, first with regard to city council actions, the council has had 2 meetings since your last meeting. The 2 council meetings were on September 4th and September 17th. On September 4th, the council approved a contract with Christine Daniel as the new city manager. She started work this past Monday, September 24th, and as I previously announced, she will be at your October 25th meeting to be introduced to the commission. On September 17th, after hearing presentations from the 3 finalist teams for the Arts Center, the City Council accepted the staff recommendation and selected Orton Development as the private partner for the project and authorized the city manager to negotiate an exclusive right to negotiate agreement with Orton. The council approved the artwork Wind Jetty for the Emeryville Marina Public Art Project and authorized the city manager to execute an agreement with the artist, Ned Kahn, for design, fabrication, transportation, and installation of that artwork. That artwork is on display out here in the link behind me. In other news, as previously announced, there will be a public safety open house and emergency preparedness fair this coming Saturday, day after tomorrow, on Saturday, September 29th from 11 to 1 p.m. at the police and fire stations out on Powell Street. The grand opening ceremony for Christie Park, previously scheduled and announced for also Saturday, September 29th to 3 to 5 p.m. has now been postponed to a future date to allow the turf in the park to get established. The Public Works Department is concerned that if too many people are running around on that brand new grass that it could damage the turf, and so they'd like to allow it to get established a little bit longer before they schedule the grand opening. So there will be a grand opening, but not right now. The opening reception for the annual Celebration of the Arts Show is next Friday, October 5th from 6 to 9 p.m. at 57 Horton Street. Hope to see you all there. The League of Women Voters will be hosting a candidate forum for City Council and School Board candidates on Tuesday, October 9th from 7 to 9 p.m. here in the council chambers. And finally, on Friday, September 7th, several staff members, along with council members Donahue and Martinez, attended the open house of the Factory OS Modular Housing Factory up in Vallejo. This is where the units will be fabricated for the intersection project at 3800 San Pablo Avenue. And we've put brochures about that factory in front of you just for your information. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Are there any questions from the commissioners? No. All right. Charlie, I have one question about an item that was included in the report in regard to Safe Routes to School. It mentioned that Safe Routes to School is now an inactive program.
Oh, you mean the progress report?
Yes.
The monthly progress report.
Yes. And so I'm curious what, how that happened and what does that mean?
That is just referring to our Safe Routes to School project, which is the crossing lights on San Pablo Avenue at 43rd, 45th, and 47th Streets and the associated crosswalk improvements. That project is completed. What's inactive is the reimbursement arrangement with the funder. Apparently there's been some snafu, bureaucratic snafu at the other end. It doesn't mean that the Safe Routes to School program has been terminated or anything like that. It's just the finalizing the paperwork for that particular project of ours, which is already built.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right. So at this point, I'm going to ask commissioners to report any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications on the agenda items tonight.
Excuse me, Vice Chair Rivero, I believe you skipped over the...
I'm sorry. We skipped over the approval of the action minutes.
The calendar for next year. Item 6.
We got it. So we have item 6.1. This is consideration for the Planning Commission meeting for 2019.
Right. So you have in your packets, you have this nifty little chart, which we prepare every year, as you know. It summarizes proposed Planning Commission meeting dates and associated event dates for next year, 2019, in conformance with the Commission's past practice and the roster approved by the City Council. The meeting dates are the fourth Thursday of every month except November and December, when they are combined into a single meeting on the second Thursday of December to avoid conflicts with the holidays. City holidays and major religious observances, including Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Sikh, and Tao holidays, have all been taken into consideration in developing this schedule. None of the proposed Planning Commission meeting dates conflict with any major religious holidays or city holidays. And where other event dates conflict with city holidays, as they have been adjusted accordingly, as noted on the chart. Those dates are simply internal processing dates. They don't have any effect on the commission or your meeting dates. So staff recommends that you approve this calendar for 2019.
Are there any questions or concerns with the calendar proposed?
I'd move approval.
All right, we have a move approval from Commissioner Donaldson. Do we have a second?
I can second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Thompson.
All right, and that's without objection, I assume? All right, very good. Your calendar for next year is approved. Thank you.
Great. All right, so at this point, we're going to move on to item 7, the disclosure of conflicts of interest or any ex parte communications for items on tonight's agenda.
I had a short email exchange with Avalon Bay on the site, on the Parcel A project.
I had a meeting with Mark from the location that's out in front of I don't know what he wants to call it. Yes, that's right. Also, I happen to also be close to the Paladue project located on 5745 Paladue. That's right under my house. I wonder if that's a...
Where's your
I live at 5855 Horton, so that is kitty corner from where I live.
Oh.
I'm within, I think
Okay.
I'm within the distance, so if you want to check that, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's the second item on the agenda, so while we're hearing
Yes.
the first item, I will double check the distance.
Thank you very much.
That's a condominium unit, right?
Yes, it is.
That you own
Okay.
or rent?
Own.
Okay, thank you.
All right, are there any other...
I met with Mr. Steffen about the public market project.
Okay, and I too met with Mr. Steffen for the City Center Realtors Partners, and as well as received a tour for East Bay Therapeutics from Mr. Azimi. All right, we're going to move on. All right, at this time we're going to continue on to public hearings. We have the item 8.1. This is a conditional use permit for a surface parking lot at the public market. And at this time, we'd like to ask staff for a report. Hello, Maru.
Good evening, Commissioners. Welcome, Commissioner Young. I'm Miru Desai, Senior Planner and a Project Planner Manager for this project. So, as you know, public market is under construction. Just to give you a brief introduction to where each construction site is at. This is Parcel D. It's currently under construction, about 200 plus units. This is Parcel C. That was the grocery store. It is complete. And the wraparound, the residential wraparound, which we call C2, that is under construction. The Christie Park is almost complete. We are expecting it to open very shortly. And the road realignment, Shell Mound Road has been realigned, and the two new roads, 62nd and 63rd Street, are in place at this point. As a result of the road alignment, what has been achieved is creation of a parcel or a building pad for Parcel B. And that is what we'll be talking about today. So currently there is a building pad for Parcel B. And if you may recall, Parcel B is going to be the parking garage to accommodate parking needs of the existing buildings, as well as retail tenants that will be there along the ground floor. If you recall, there used to be a parking lot which was right next to or in front of the existing building, and that's no longer there because the road is now, and the road used to go along Shell Mound. So that's changed. So that parking lot has disappeared in order to create a new parcel, Parcel B, which is the parking garage. The key thing to note is that Parcel A, which is a residential building, is nowhere near, is not under construction. We don't have a building permit application, and this Parcel A cannot be built till the garage building is built here, because this provides the parking for the existing users. And so if this gets under construction, there will not be enough adequate parking for the existing users, and therefore B needs to be constructed before A can be constructed. So this is something to keep in mind as we go along. So just again, going through the same thing again, but in words, between February 2015 and June 2016, the Commission approved a number of final development plans for Parcel C1, that's the grocery store which has been built, Parcel C2, that's the units wrapping the grocery store which are under construction. D, that's the residential building, it's also under construction. E, that's the park, almost complete. And we are talking about Parcel B. And so what we FTP is for the parking structure with ground floor retail. And the Parcel A is also the FTP has been approved for a residential building with some ground floor retail as well. And of course, the realignment of the Shell Mound Street and creation of the two new 62nd and 63rd Streets is complete at this point. So what is being proposed by City Center Realty is that, as I mentioned, Parcel B FTP, which was approved in June of 2016, accommodates parking with ground floor retail. The garage would provide parking for existing commercial users that have been served by previous surface parking lot, that is Parcel C, and are going to be served by the existing parking lot, that's Parcel A. City Center has indicated that they wish to apply for an amendment to the FTP for the Parcel B to accommodate office space, and this would be in addition to the parking spaces and I believe the ground floor retail as well. And in the meantime, as they apply for FDB amendment and apply for their building permit, they wish to use the building pad that has been created for parcel B for parking during the interim. And the interim means 2 years. And that's where the condition is that this use permit is valid for 2 years. In terms of the parking spaces, it's about 68,000 square feet and will accommodate approximately 200 plus parking spaces. Each stall meets our city standards in terms of their size, as well as the drive aisle also meet widths of 24 feet. So this is what we are talking about. These are the existing buildings, and this is the existing pad. And this is where they hope to use this pad as a parking lot. This is a close-up version of it. There will be entry. The entry and exit to the parking lot would be in the same position of entry and exit of the building that has been approved for this pad. There are certain findings that the commission needs to make in order to approve this project, and we believe that they can be made. This is an interim project, and in terms of where compliance can happen, they have been met. We believe that how these findings can be made has been outlined in the resolution. Like I mentioned, the approval is for 2 years. If the applicant wishes to extend the use after 2 years, then it will have to come back to the Planning Commission for that extension. And we have introduced a condition regarding that if they do come in for an extension after the 2 years, then they would need to install landscaping in the surface parking lot and lighting per standards outlined in our planning regulations. The reason we are putting that now is to give the applicant a heads up that if within 2 years they are not able to start their construction, then this is what they will, at least at the very minimum, will be looking at, is installing landscaping and lighting. At the moment, we are not asking that this parking lot be lit because it is interim. And in order to ensure that the parking lot is not used during nighttime hours, there's a condition which requires them to close and open the parking lots every day. So the idea is that the parking lot will not be used during evening hours. There is a memo in front of you. It looks like this. It's a slight change in the condition of approval, which says that in the event that this use continues after 2 years, then they have to install both landscaping and lighting according to the relevant sections of the planning regulations. In addition, I would also like to point to a email that was sent, and you have a hard copy as well in front of you, by John Sherman. He's the resident of PPP. So that concludes my presentation. We are recommending approval subject to the conditions of approvals outlined in the staff report. Mark Steffen is here. If you have questions for him, I do not believe he has a presentation.
Thank you, Maru. Are there any questions for Maru from the commissioners at this point?
Yeah, Maru, I got a question. Is it possible that in this temporary parking, when there's an extension, that it isn't just landscaping that might be considered, but maybe a specific space to maybe make the place really cool by adding Uber or some kind of scooter drop-off or something like that, that might be kind of neat to really make it useful for the residences that would have that space?
It can be done. Like I said, for the extension, they would have to return to the commission for their extension, and at that time, it would be appropriate to give that feedback.
Thank you.
Can you tell us about the status of the sidewalk in front of the parking lot at this time?
Status. I have not been there recently.
Can you step up to the podium? Thank you.
I'm Mark Steffen. I'm president of City Center Realty Partners, the developer and owner of Public Market. The sidewalk that runs on the east side of Shell Mount in front of this parcel B, the FDP allowed that and the development agreement could be postponed until after B was built. We've decided to put the sidewalk in, so it's complete. So the sidewalk in front is landscaped, so it's landscaped and complete. And just, if you don't mind just a second, is that This was between where the old Shell Mound was and where the new Shell Mound was. That was a parking lot until March. So it wasn't just always a building pad, it was a parking lot. And when we determined we couldn't go forward under the existing plan, just because of the economics were such that our construction costs went up 20% and the retail market landscapes changed dramatically and the rents these tenants will pay has gone down probably 30%, we needed to come up with a new option. So that's why we want to do something temporary, and we'd like to be back in front of the commission November, December with a new plan for that site.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yeah, I had a question about stormwater runoff. I know there were some preconditions to this.
We have, as part of this parking lot, there is a stormwater treatment, I like to call them sarcophaguses because it's what they look like. It's off to the southwest corner to treat that. And we worked with our civil engineer, BKF, to provide that.
You may be wondering, so this, I believe, is the stormwater.
That's right, that's correct.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Keller?
I have a couple questions for staff. It's pretty simple. Is in the staff report, we refer to approximately 200 parking spaces, approximately 200, but the plan that I'm actually looking at says it's 210. Do I have an actual count of what is going to be installed in that spot? And I'd like that put in the condition of approval that we have an actual count of what we're going to install.
Let's put in 210 if you prefer an exact.
And then you talked about the Parcel A development not being able to proceed until there is a garage at Parcel B. So if we're stalling this project for 2 years to begin with, and then they have to build a garage a year again, so we're stalling the project in Parcel A for at least 3 years?
That is correct.
Okay, and then
we're going to ask that you step up if you want to respond there.
Yeah,
Thank
because I have
you.
a question for you as well.
Our desire is to bring something in front of you as soon as we can, which would be the end of this year, and then hopefully have something, final approvals, first quarter of next year, complete the working drawings and be under construction by third quarter of 2019. Mm-hmm. That's what our goal is.
Okay, so if that goal doesn't come to fruition, can you explain how this will work? Because that's the idea of Parcel A is your parking for now. You build a parking garage, you fully park the development, and then Parcel A can begin. If you go ahead and just build the surface parking lot, as we discussed, then everything is on hold. We can't do anything with Parcel A until we actually have a garage or a structure of some sort on that Parcel B. Is that correct?
Well, you're talking about our agreements with, in terms of, is it possible? Could it possibly build A? We don't want to do that, but it's possible you could, because you're not building the retail on B, so you don't have that demand. So you could surface park the rest of the demand of the project and still meet the parking requirements, but that's not what we want to do, because if you did that, if you built A, you'd have a problem coming back and building B unless you had off-site parking during the time you built it.
Correct. That's my concern. So is who holds title on Parcel A right now?
We do.
You still own title on that? Okay. So you do control what development happens on there? Right. Okay. Okay, that's all my questions for now. Thanks.
I have a question for you, Mark. When we met, I mentioned some concern with the lack of bicycle parking on the east side of the public market. Can you speak to any resolutions or solutions that you plan to incorporate with this change?
You and I met and we talked about providing bicycle parking. First of all, you requested perhaps in the 2 parking spaces that are on the west side of Shell Mound in front of Pete's Coffee. And I said to you that at the time that if parking is a little bit challenged right now to sort of carve out 2 spaces, it's difficult. If it could be a possibility of cementing in a bike rack there, that's one thing, because that's one cost. But if we had to tear it, we've already put in, and landscape and this and that could be another $30,000, $40,000. We're already well over budget on this, so I said we'd be willing to consider that, and more bike amenities when we come back to you for Parcel B. The original Parcel B had quite a bit of bike parking, and we were talking about bike valet and such, so we're certainly willing to consider that for B. We also talked about, could we locate some bike parking on the existing sidewalk, and we'd look into that, but there's a fire code required width that has to be between the curb and where this is in the fire code. So if you can work something out with the fire department, we're happy to put in bike parking.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, are there any more questions for staff or for the applicant? All right. At this time, I'd like to open up for the public hearing. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak on behalf of this item? All right. So, public hearing is closed. At this time, we want to bring back the item for the commission to deliberate. We'll begin with Commissioner Keller.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to reiterate my continued support and appreciation towards staff for the detailed and sometimes difficult work they do for us in the city. I'd like to also express my sincere understandings of the Bay Area's current difficulties in construction, the cost of materials, finding adequate work labor, and the difficulty and constraints of this site in particular. I additionally understand as well the ever-evolving retail climate that we're in. But while enclosed malls, strip malls, big box retailers are struggling, destination shopping centers, districts like the one planned for the marketplace are growing in popularity and seeing success. Recent articles in San Francisco Business Times tells of high success in the newly developed Broadway Plaza and Walnut Creek and the Village at Corte Madera in Marin County. I also see good success at 4th Street in Berkeley. I'm actually a little dismayed that this is before us tonight as a public hearing. I really fully expected something like this to come to us as a study session. In reading the information presented, that we are asked to approve something that could conceivably be with us for a very long time. Additionally, we're being asked to approve something that our general plan does not specifically allow for. And more so, that we have no idea of the changes being proposed for the long term. Before delving into the issues of concern, I want to give my understanding of the difference between a PUD and a PUD and PDP and an FDP. We're no longer in a planned development phase. What we have is an approved final project. The development plan that we have is an approved final project. And the approved, fully built-out plan does not allow for surface parking. It is germane because, as stated in the staff report, Emeryville design guidelines are for structured parking, not surface lots. Reason being is the city wishes to eliminate surface parking lots. I understand that we are using the word temporary to identify this lot, but the extension clause gives me pause. I'm concerned about the time frame needed. The existence of a temporary parking lot, the staff report suggests it would be for a period up to 2 years. That's a direct quote out of the staff report. But several other places provided in the documentation say it will take at least 2 years. Those two statements are in conflict. I know the conditional use permit before us states that we are being asked to approve a 2-year permit with an optional extended vote by this commission. I'm concerned by the ambiguity that the city could end up with a surface parking lot for many, many years to come. If the commission moves forward with the approval, I'd like to suggest a 2-year cap with no extension clause, or maybe a 3-year cap with something we could discuss, but I think we need to do a cap so that we actually get something moving forward without proceeding with continued extensions. The purpose being is to motivate the developer on a project that not has a surface park and not have a surface parking lot for this foreseeable future. Additionally, other than surface parking lots, the commission has no idea what's proposed for the future development of this parcel. We're being asked to make a serious change for something that will be detailed sometime in the future. Does the new proposal allow for retail space, or is it just commercial? I'm currently not in support of losing the planned retail pads, but tonight I have no idea what change the plan we're being asked to approve. And what if we don't like the proposed changes? We could be stuck with this temporary surface parking lot until an agreement on what can be built on that site can be reached, which could take several more years. I believe before we make any kind of binding decision, temporary or otherwise, we need to see a complete new proposal. Moving forward, in discussion item A, I do not feel that the applicant has convincingly demonstrated the infeasibility to provide parking elsewhere. There is the parking structure in parcel C where the grocery store is vacant and the townhouse apartments are nowhere near occupancy. I walked that parking structure during the business hours on Tuesday. In the structure itself, there were 30 available spots, and not counting the top floor, which is gated off. Tonight I counted there were 14 cars out of that whole space. So there's a lot of spaces available in the parking structure. And parcel A, the parking over there at that same time was about 50% empty. So I haven't seen any convincing argument that says that we can't park this need elsewhere. Under the findings for the CUP, item 2, I find that the surface parking lot will adversely affect the surrounding areas by not promoting the intent of our general plan, nor the approved final development plan by adding structured parking as recommended in our general plan, as well as not supporting other existing and planned retail outlets, and will adversely affect the neighborhood character of a planned, dense urban center, and turning it into a suburbanized parking lot. Because these findings cannot be made, I ask my fellow commissioners to join me in not adopting the resolution and to ask the developer to come back to the commission in a study session with a complete draft plan to include all proposed changes to parcel B, which could include a temporary surface parking lot. Thank you.
Commissioner Donaldson.
I think that there were some interesting things brought up by Mr. Sherman's letter about possible swaps of property, rearranging, looking at the whole thing. But I'm not understanding how denying the temporary parking lot is going to force the developer to build something sooner than they want to build it, or to not have to come back to us for approval, which he'll have to do whenever he wants to build something. If he wants to change it, he's going to have to come back. I appreciate that they've put in the sidewalk and the landscaping. The parcel B has to be paved over in any event under the requirements of the DTSC. And I don't see any problem with putting in a temporary parking lot while they're working out the plans for what they're going to bring back to us, which we can then either approve or not approve, but it's not going to speed anything up by not letting them put a parking lot there. So.
All right, Commissioner Thompson.
Sure. I was divided on this myself because the question about the need to have the adequate supply. There was a lot of discussion about, the parking garage has to be built before A can be developed, which was somewhat irrelevant to this. The real question was, is there an inadequate supply, and is this needed for the duration? And so I kind of felt like there was a lot of information presented, but it wasn't addressing the salient point about a pretty efficient, not landscaped, not lit piece of pavement that isn't necessarily in accordance with the general plan or the design guidelines, but may serve a need. And I didn't feel like the threshold was met, that there was enough information to say that this was actually a necessity for the interim.
Commissioner Young.
Yeah, I was kind of a little bit torn on this whole idea too when I kind of looked at it and it came around to me. But I'm thinking about the dust and stuff and the dirt and just kind of like it being a place to kind of accumulate trash over the next couple years or something if they decide when they want to make up their mind with it. I also know that some of the stores in that immediate area, they are getting winded. The winds come up, blows into their front doors. They get, they're out constantly sweeping. And so I think if there's anything that can do and I have no issue with it being a temporary spot. If it doesn't work, we have a lot of extra. But I would like to state that maybe at this particular time to maybe think about what that parking could look like and think of it longer than 2 years in case it could be. So like we have this idea about this landscaping coming up in 2 years, and I kind of think it might be, if we're going to do anything, think about what we could do with that space now as we're laying it out. Maybe some of those edges or something like that could add a little bit more to bringing a little bit more vitality to the city or that particular area.
All right. So, like my fellow commissioners, I too am torn with this because I've really appreciated all the bicycle infrastructure that's been included here in this part of our city, and we're asking to introduce at least 210 cars to this space. I do think that it's necessary for the vitality of the public market, and I want to see that business succeed. And so that's a need that I think is necessary for this space. However, I do have a question for you, Mark. The parcel C parking that Commissioner Keller mentioned that was empty, for the units that are planned to open in spring of 2019, are those units planned to use the parking in that building?
Those units will use the top floor parking.
Mm-hmm.
And the peak demand, Supervisor Keller, is not in the evening when you walk through.
It was during the business day that I walked through.
The peak demand is between noon and 2 o'clock when the food hall is in operation. And the reason we want these extra spaces is that we want the customers to come to the food hall and know that they can go in and park and find the great food that's there. We don't want them to come and say it's too hard to get in, it's too hard to park, so they don't even bother to come. Mm-hmm. So our idea is to get them so it makes it easy initially, so they're hooked, and then they'll come back no matter what the parking situation is. So that's the real reason we want to do this. So if you go during the peak, like lunch hour on Parcel C, that garage, it's full the first and the second level.
Let me clarify, because unfortunately, Vice Chair mistook. I didn't say the parking store was empty. I said it had 30 stalls. It had 30 available stalls on the second and third floor. The top floor is completely open because it's locked off.
Understood.
You cannot. So the top floor was fairly empty. The
What
other
time
two
of day was that?
3.
Yeah, well, that's the quietest time right now. If you walk by between noon and 1 o'clock or 2, it's full.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first two levels.
Well, the other argument that I have against that is, again, what we're doing by allowing parking is we're promoting driving, and what we're trying to do is promote alternatives.
But you also want to
ways.
promote the public market to be successful.
Of course we do.
You want to promote that, and you want more retail there too.
Of course.
And the only way you're going to get more retail is if the retailers are not there, see that the existing tenants are successful and their sales are up. That means the food hall and the other spaces. Mm-hmm. And so we need to make it, we had all the construction, the road being redone. There were folks that decided it was too much of a hassle. We don't want to come there. And so we want to make it easy for them to come back, see the changes we've made, and really make the sales increase for the benefit of the vendors, and so we can help sell that to future customers and tenants to come in.
And do you think that having an anchor tenant like the grocery store in place would help that?
It would make a big difference, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Steffen.
Difference. Thank you.
Okay, and so some of my other thoughts about this, Commissioner Young mentioned the dirt and the unsightly lot that we're looking at right now. I wouldn't want to see that sit for 2 years while we're deciding what the design is for that space. And so I think to utilize that space for customers in the public market does make sense to me. I wish that bike parking was more of a consideration with this proposal. And the 2 spaces that I mentioned to you, Mr. Steffen, in front of the Hot Italian are actually the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee has asked that City Council make those spaces for bicyclists. Recently, at a trip to Palm Springs, I was actually really surprised by a car-centric city that made spaces and took away 1 or 2 spots for bicycle parking to fit up to 10 bicyclists in that same spot that 1 car would fit. So I think that there could be more of an effort to accommodate bicyclists parking, and especially because this is the direction that we're entering the public market through the new greenway there. That said, I would approve this because I think that it's going to help the business succeed. There are going to be more apartments introduced in the future for Parcel C to be used, and I would like to see more information about the design in the future for that space, and do believe that a study session is necessary for that, and wouldn't want to see this parking lot more than 2 years. And so that's where I stand with this.
Can I ask, is there a possibility of taking a few stalls in the proposed surface parking and sticking some bike racks in there? Can we put additional bicycle parking? Do you have a number in mind that would be adequate?
I think that 10 spaces on that side are needed, and then that should be sufficient for the next couple of years.
I would move approval of it with the
I'd still like to make a couple of comments regarding what was said, particularly for you, Commissioner Donaldson. You're talking about the time to reach an agreement, approve or not approve the project. That's one of my main concerns, is they come back in November and December with a project that we just cannot buy into, that we just do not like. And then they go back to the drawing board. We go back and forth on this item of something that we never are happy with, and we'd get anything, or then maybe they're tired of trying to deal with this project and they put the market, the whole project up for sale, and then a new buyer goes through the process, comes into town, they have to go through the process. We're now into year 3 of doing this. There's no motivation to change that from a surface parking lot into if those things come up. And in addition, there was a comment made about the 2 years may not come to pass. If that's the case, if it's not going to take 2 years, and if you are working on coming up with a plan that you're going to present to us in November, why not put this on hold until we can see the whole plan in November and see, hey, this is something we like. It's going to take them a while let's put a surface parking lot in until they build this approved project.
The alternative seems to be to leave a big empty spot of dirt out there.
And the reason being is to motivate that doesn't stay a parking lot, that we actually build something on it, that it's, I mean, I live in that neighborhood, and so does Miguel. I've been there almost 17 years. It's been a construction site for 15. I'm not exaggerating. There's been something under construction, whether it's the Avenue 64, Emmy Apartments, the demo of what was there. 2 more months isn't going to kill us in that neighborhood to make sure that we don't end up with a surface parking lot for 5 years. So that's my contention.
Thank you, Commissioner Keller. Are there any more comments?
I'd like to make a little comment. Steve brought up a kind of an interesting thought, and I can see, but I've yet, as old as I am, I've yet to meet a developer that wants to sit around and just let property sit for a long period of time and lose money. It's kind of like not their ideal of, but I'm not really for exactly development unless it actually makes sense for people around us. The thing that kind of gets me is this whole thing about trying to reward them in 2 years that then they can consider landscaping, and now this other idea where I brought up, the scooters and the Uber or whatever it is, that and now we're thinking 10 spaces for this bicycle parking area, and what you do when you try to put these projects together, you try to come together with some kind of due diligence. You're trying to come up with what's the best alternative that makes most sense for most numbers of people. And if it takes, in fact, we make a decision in 30 days, we make a decision in 2 months. Well, okay, that's fine. The question is, the motivation is, developers want to develop. That's what they do. And you think they are trained to do this. Is what they're all about. They work with architects. Architects come back with it, and they go back and forth, and they fish ideas back of each other, trying to make a better project out of it. I don't think covering this lot and having 10 spaces set up for bicycles are going to change all that much. I just don't see it. 2 months, so you say yes. 2 months, you say no. But I do think that if we right now say let's think about leaving an opportunity to really do something, if they come back with reapplication in a couple of years or something, that maybe we bring some of those applications up front now. He might be willing to do that if we ask him.
Thank you. Commissioner Thompson, you look like no. Okay.
I just want to reply to Commissioner Tito's. I understand that developers want to develop. They want to develop when it's profitable. And right now, it's very expensive to build in this area. It's very hard to find labor. If you read any of the trade papers, there is a slowing down of the economy. There's also the new propositions on the ballot that could heavily influence what Avalon Bay or any other apartment builder is going to build in the future. If Prop 10 passes, they will not build anything anymore. We're not going to see any more apartments if they can't make money off it. And the cost in this area of buildings and renting them is so high that if they can't charge an appropriate amount to make that money, they're not going to build these things. So keeping the economy in mind and what's happening in our economy, this parking lot is a benefit to them. And it's a benefit to them in 2 years, it's a benefit to them in 5 years, it's a benefit to them if they try to resell the property. But let me tell you, an empty dirt parking lot or an empty dirt spot is no motivation for anything other than, okay, I have this property that's sitting dead. It doesn't provide parking for my customers in my other buildings. It doesn't do anything, so I need to develop it. But once there's a parking lot on there, that's viable property that's usable. And we have no play in the game to say, get to work, get building something here. We have, we're just going to have what we had when we started this project in 2008 to get rid of surface parking lots and develop a dense urban neighborhood. And we're not going to get that with this parking lot. And, and so I'm saying is there may be the need for this parking lot. Bring me a project. Tell me what you want to put there. Yeah, I like that idea. Let's build it, put in that temporary parking lot, start your process for building this new building. But we have a approved final development plan that is not a surface parking lot. It's a parking structure with retail, and we're not going to get that. And if we approve this tonight, we could have this for 5 years. So if we are going to approve it, then I would ask that we say 3 years minimum, maximum is what you have, no point of extension. Because he's telling us he's going to come back and start this project before the end of 2019. If you give him 3 years, that's plenty of time to meet that goal.
Thank you. All right.
I would still like to move approval of the project with the addition of 10 bicycle parking spots in the surface parking lot.
We have a motion to move by Commissioner Donaldson. Is there a second?
Can I make an alternate motion?
It wouldn't be an alternate. It wouldn't be a substitute motion because there's no motion on the floor. Because it wasn't seconded.
Okay. So can I make
You
another
make a
motion?
Absolutely.
I would move approval as long as we put a 3-year cap on the time frame with no extension, and we add the 10 parking spaces, 10 bicycle parking spaces.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor to include 10 bicycle parkings and extend the permit for 3 years as opposed to 2. Is there a second?
I have a question. What happens if there is not a development after 3 years? Do they tear up the parking lot?
They just close it and don't use it? They can stay there?
They close it and don't use it?
Correct.
I would like
What do they put? They put a red ribbon, they put a yellow ribbon on it? Or what?
Put a fence around it.
Put a fence around it?
It's going to
They
have
don't
a
use it?
partial fence anyway to control traffic, so in the places where you have driveways, you put in a gate. And what you do essentially is revoke the permit to use the property as a parking structure or surface parking. I'm just saying, if they're motivated to do that, they need approval tonight, and they can't show us what they have in plan for the future, which I would be more than willing to entertain. If we're going to approve something tonight, put their feet to the fire, let's show us what you have in mind, and let's move forward with this. Because as I said, the PUP was approved in 2008. Okay, that's 10 years ago. We started the process of approving that 2 years before that. So we're 12 years into this project. And what do we really have there that's done?
So what do you want to extend it to 3 years if you're...
It might take them a little longer. I mean, 2 years, according to the documents we have, it's up to 2 years or at least 2 years. So if we give them 3 years, that's definitely if we're saying that we're not going to give them an extension, it definitely gives them a period that's workable of time.
Well, Stephen, I'll second yours if you think if that makes sense.
We have a second from Commissioner Young. And Jay, are there any concerns with the amendments made to the resolution?
So I think Charlie and I need just a minute to make sure that we're capturing them appropriately in the condition. So I'm hearing a motion for 3 years with the addition of
10 parking spaces.
10 bicycle parking spaces.
Yes.
And no provision for extension of the time frame.
No provision.
So the conditional use permit will just expire at the end of 3 years.
That's correct.
Give us just one moment, please.
And while you guys are talking, I'm very passionate about this project because I really see the value in what we had approved, and I really saw the neighborhood that Emeryville really needs. We really need this type of development that's not quite like Bay Street, that has a really different, and I really feel it could be a destination spot. And I think I've talked to you several times about possible retailer stores that could be there.
We talked to all of them and then some. So the community.
Can you step up to the podium, please?
People on TV can't hear you.
Right. We've talked to all of those retailers that you mentioned and probably 100 more. And what we really need is the community to come out and support it more. Because what happens, the retailers come, they walk by and they say, okay, the food hall's busy during a particular time, but what about other times? So we need the community, if they really feel this way the way you do, we feel passionate about it, you feel passionate about it, the community needs to, so to speak, vote with their feet and really frequent the marketplace.
And I agree with that. And I eat there at least every Wednesday night, and they need to come back at night because it is pretty busy. But the thing is, Mark, the only thing that's there right now are the food halls.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing else to go to. There's no grocery store.
Well, that's right. And the grocery store, part of the issue there was getting that single approved and delayed. And
Right.
by the time this happened, New Seasons changed their mind. If we'd been able to start that thing 3 months earlier, they'd have already been open and they'd been doing great business.
Right.
But it got delayed, and so it
Yeah,
didn't
we
happen.
can't go back.
I know, but I'm just saying, that's why it's not open. And we can't control that process now because they're the tenant, they're
Right.
paying rent. So we don't have a right. And in fact, they've excluded us from participating in a dialogue to try to find new grocers. Because they say, we control this, and we want to make sure that you don't sidetrack the process. And so that our hands have been tied. We'd love to be able to find a replacement grocer, but we've not been allowed to participate in the process because they have a direct lease. They're talking about a sublease.
All right.
So, yeah, would the situation be much different if the grocer's open? Yeah. Will there be a grocer? Yes. And hopefully that happens the next 6 months. I would have thought it would have happened 6 months earlier.
Yeah. And if you were to say to let them out of their lease, you don't have to pay this anymore, we'll find a grocery store, they're not amenable to that?
It's a big number because, where the rents are, where they were, where they are, and such.
Of course.
Because the market's changed.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Steffen.
Thanks.
All right, I think that we're ready to hear from Andrea and Charlie.
Okay, we think we've got it. So in the conditions of approval under 1A, project approvals, it said a 2-year conditional use permit to allow a temporary surface parking lot with approximately 200 spaces in accordance with, et cetera, et cetera. We would change that to a 3-year conditional use permit. And then we add the provision about 10 bicycle parking spaces per city standards in the lot. And then under 1C, approval, effectiveness, and duration, it did say this approval shall expire on September 27th, 2020, unless extended by the Planning Commission in accordance with condition mentioned below. We would change that to this approval shall expire on September 27th, 2021. And at the end of this period, the striping shall be removed and the lot closed to the public. And then the condition that talks about the extension would be deleted.
Okay, is there any feedback
That
from the
sounds good to
commissioners?
me.
All right, I think that we're ready for a roll call vote here.
All right, on the motion, let's see, Commissioner Donaldson,
Aye.
Commissioner Keller,
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson,
Aye.
Commissioner Young,
Aye.
and Vice Chair Herrero.
Aye.
5 ayes, the application is approved. This decision may be appealed to the City Council within 15 days.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda. And this is item 8.2. It's a permit to allow on-site consumption for East Bay Therapeutics. And I believe we have a presentation from Maru.
Excuse me, Vice Chair Herrero?
Yes.
I believe Commissioner Young needs to recuse on this item.
Thank you very much. I need to recuse. I am within the 500 feet of this area. I'll just sit out in the area in front. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening again. This is an amendment to an existing use permit that the commission approved in April of this year to establish a cannabis retail dispensary, which is located across Broken Rack, as we know. And this is what the front of the building looks like. And as you may recall, EBT was selected through an RFP process by the City Council back in September of 2017, and it was one of the 2 applicants selected. And as part of that application, EBT had indicated that it would provide several community benefits which would include things like City Walk program, a certain amount of money going to local schools, holding fundraisers, providing discount to veterans and low-income patients, and providing venues for local artists to showcase their work for sale, and to start a community social equity incubator program. All these were memorialized in the operating permit that was issued by the police department, so they are intact and nothing is being changed to that. In April, when you approved, it was for a 5,000 square feet of tenant space in an existing 63,000 square foot building. And the uses that were permitted were on-site retail sale of cannabis products, on-site pickup, home delivery. They were proposing 10 employees and 3 security personnel, and they had 18 spaces in the parking lot behind Honor Bar. And the hours of operation that has been permitted by this dispensary is from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week. Delivery is from 8 to 7. And now with the on-site consumption, that component, the proposal is from noon to till 10 p.m. When the dispensary shuts down. So here is the plan for the site. So this is the existing storefront, which, by the way, had a, are we calling it a hard opening or a soft opening? Was that a hard opening or was that a soft opening last week, a couple of weeks ago?
That was the actual opening.
That was the actual opening, okay. So September 14th was they officially opened, and they have been there for a few months now. And what they are now proposing is to occupy a portion of the site, about 3,500 square feet, for on-site consumption. I would like to let the Commission know that on-site consumption was part of the feature that they had proposed in their RFP, and it is my understanding it was for that one feature that the Council selected this one after they had selected the BPG. So this is part of the expectation of what EPT was supposed to do. Initially, they wanted to open the store, and then once they got ready, they are now ready to open an on-site consumption lounge. So this is the existing storefront. Pillar 2 is the bottom. This is the main entrance. You go in there. You enter the building through here. And let me just get this is a little bit more clear. So you enter the building, the facility here, go through your checkpoints and customer verification, and then you enter the storefront here. You have different rooms and these rooms are going to be used by vendors who have their own products. There is therapy rooms and consultation rooms, and of course there's a call center for dispatch. This is kind of what's in there at the moment. This is the lounge area, which, as you would keep walking further down after you've done your security check-in, and then there are 2 entrances to this lounge area. One is right here, and there is one here. So they are going to be restricting vaping and smoking to these rooms on the side. These are existing facilities. There's no changes to the interiors. These rooms exist. And the lounge area would be used for edibles. So the idea is to contain the smoke within a certain areas. This is the picture of the dispensary. I was present at this day, September 14th. There was both the opening as well. There was a community meeting before that, and well, nobody really showed up for the community meeting, so as such, I guess people didn't have any further comments. But just to give you, there's this artist who's doing artwork on the walls of the dispensary, and so if you can see his artwork on those walls as well. This is the room which will be used for the lounge area, and these are the rooms on the side which would be used for smoking and vaping. So in terms of the zoning districts, the cannabis retail and including on-site consumption is permitted. There's no change in the FAR or the height or any exterior changes to the building. In terms of auto parking, that it does increase their parking ratio. They now need 7 to 11 spaces, and they already have 18 spaces designated in that existing parking lot behind the honor bar, so they are okay in terms of auto parking. So in terms of the amendment, you again have to make the CUP findings, which we believe is very similar to the findings you made in April, that this is a new retail activity which will contribute to the economic diversity of the city, and the project is using an existing, vacant space. And it complies with all the applicable planning regulations. There are 2 specific conditions of approvals I would like to draw your attention to. One is regarding they will need to submit to the building department air purification and maintenance plan in order to ensure that any kind of odors are not released outside of the building. They will also need from the fire departments, this is something pretty standard, is a certification of the sprinkler system as well as a fire inspection. As part of this set of conditions of approvals, we have removed the condition which said no on-site smoking and vaping, obviously, so that they do not contradict. And so, like I mentioned, the applicant did hold a community meeting. No one was present at the meeting. In terms of the condition of approvals, which you have in your packet, there is a little modifications. This is basically to ensure that they can start the lounge activities before they do their air purification plans and their fire clearance, since that is more related to the vaping and the on-site smoking component of it. So it just says that they can't start the vaping and smoking activities before they get their air purification plans and fire inspections done. So that concludes my presentation. The applicant does have a presentation as well. You can ask me questions now or later. It's up to you.
All right. Are there any questions for Maru at this moment from commissioners?
I just had a quick question about an inconsistency in the staff report. It was just about the delivery date. I noticed the operational permit had an 8 o'clock to 8 o'clock delivery date, and then the conditions of approval had a 7 to 8, and so I wondered which ruled and whether
it should be consistent. And I would say the operating permit is a different one.
Yeah, so the operating is page 6 of 10. It says 8 to 8, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., and then
We would clean that up and make it consistent to the use permit, because the operating permit will also need to be amended with this change.
okay.
So at that time, I'll make sure that the hours of operation are the ones that are in the use permit.
Okay, so it would be the 7 to 8.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to, because deliveries are often a nuisance to neighbors, and so I wanted to make sure that we were clear on what the time was.
Right. So they are different. The delivery hours are a little later.
So Maru, can I ask for clarification while you're looking that up? Are we talking delivery to the facility or making deliveries from the facilities to their clients? This is when we were first approving the 3 manufacturing, was something I asked we clarify that the way do we get rid of this confusion is deliveries would refer to items leaving the facility going to clients. Things coming to the facility would be receivings. And that's, I think, where we have confusions, because deliveries could be from the facility or to the facility.
Well, they're both.
Right, so I think for us
not delivery as such, but if you're looking at trips.
Right. But I think if we want to specify when does this property receive product, we should call those receivings. And when does this facility send product out to its customers, those would be deliveries.
And that may explain the difference.
It makes a big difference, and it clarifies that what we're talking about. Because I think that in the staff report, we're talking about when does this business take out product and make deliveries.
So when I read that the delivery is from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., my understanding is that there are no trips that are being made before 8 a.m. to or from the facility for the purpose of this activity. So that's what When I read that, that's what I understand, and that's what I believe that the applicant understands as well.
And
However, if I am, a customer, a walking customer, the facility would be open at an earlier hour.
Right.
And I would be able to come in and,
So you're saying that they can actually end up receiving products at 7 o'clock at night?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we can ask the applicant when they come up if that's.
I mean, that's
clearly,
whether they actually are doing it, I don't think they are using these
Right.
kind of hours.
Right.
But these are consistent with what the state allows as well.
Okay.
Both the 6 to 10 and, those are what's allowed by the state.
Vice Chair,
Commissioner, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, could I just clarify one thing?
Yes.
Sure.
I don't really see this as a conflict. The conditions of approval on the conditional use permit that you approved on April 26th say pickups and deliveries to the property shall be prohibited between the hours of 7 p.m. and 8 a.m. The police chief may further impose conditions on pickups and deliveries through an operator's permit. So what the conditions of the use permit say is that if the police chief imposes different conditions through the operator's permit, then those would prevail. And then the operator's permit says delivery shall occur only between the hours of 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. So my reading of this is that it's 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. because that prevails over the use permit conditions.
Thank you, Charlie.
To the customer, patient, or primary caregiver.
Yeah,
This isn't-
I think this is why it's a question, is because it was unclear.
So, sorry, delivery in the context of cannabis generally just talks about delivering product from the retailer to the end user. What you're talking about, the receipt of, product that's going to be turned around and redistributed or delivered to end users, that's usually referred to as distribution in our ordinance.
And that's the 7, that's the one in the conditional,
Apparently.
yeah, okay,
Yes.
okay. Yeah, I just was looking for clarity on that because there's a lot of language and hours. Okay.
We have a comment from Commissioner Donaldson? Nope. Okay. I have a question, Maru. Can we turn back to the image with the actual space that's being considered for consumption?
The picture or the
I think it's 10.
plan? Oh,
Yeah, that one. Are those so these are the doors in...
Down to 12.
this is the lounge room.
Got it. So I'm just seeing images of different doors, and I don't recall glass or like a visual being able to like you can't see when the doors are closed inside any of those spaces. And maybe that's a question for the applicant. And so my concern is that if there's no way for the business to monitor what's going on inside while people are consuming the products.
There are actually cameras.
Okay.
If you see, there's a camera in each. These are the things for cameras.
Mhm.
So they're in each room and within the lounge area as well.
Okay. And so is the intention from the applicant to have a private space that is not viewed from the outside lounge area?
If I may, state law requires that the consumption area be screened from the other areas.
Mm-hmm. With no glass?
You can do basically you're not able, my understanding of the state regulation is that you shouldn't be able to see people consuming.
Okay.
So whether that's opaque glass or an actual wall, how you accomplish not being able to see it.
Interesting.
Or through the camera? Would that be...
Camera's okay because you need security, but
Right.
Okay. Answers my
somebody
questions.
just kind of walking by
Mhm.
or who is visiting wouldn't be able to see it.
And in that space, there will be, actually, kind of we invite the applicant up here at this point. I think these are more questions for you.
Yes, let me show you. It's right here. If you can, it's right here.
Okay, great, thank you.
So maybe,
Yeah, I'll click on that.
All right. Hello.
Hello.
Mr. Azimi?
Would you like me to do my presentation and then we tackle the questions? Or?
Let's do that.
Okay, very good, thank you. This is, looks like a PDF, so that should just work. Fine.
To advance it, you can use the down arrow on the top bar.
Oh,
There you go.
all right. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you again for the opportunity to stand before you and present our next package. First of all, I want to thank all the city staff for keeping us in check in the context of maintaining a credible operation. Miru, Chad, Andrea, and indirectly Charlie, they've been outstanding to work with in the sense of the fact that this is a regulated industry, and they are very helpful to make sure that we continue to work on solutions. So I wanted to make a strong point of that. I am Nasser Azimi, and I am the president of East Bay Therapeutics. As a matter of personal background, I have 25 years of high-tech experience, worked for a couple of governors in Sacramento, and developed a few technology firms, consulting, software, and about a few years back, my son, who's a cannabis expert, a plant botanist, approached me about the cannabis opportunity and indicated that this is going through legalization. How about we team up and tackle this opportunity together? So we teamed up on that particular note, and we developed a brand called Ohana in Sacramento. We do have vertically integrated operations up and down the state, starting in Sacramento, San Diego, and Long Beach. And we're gradually making our way into the Bay Area with the East Bay Therapeutics brand. And as we learn more and more about cannabis, we learned that cannabis goes way beyond the psychoactive THC aspects, and there is that CBD element that in some cases is called the miracle scenario, but we don't believe it's a miracle cure, but it certainly goes a long way to deal with a lot of situations that are currently tackled with synthetic medicine, such as opiates and such, and research is now proving that CBD and other therapeutic aspects of cannabis are much more prevalent and are catching significant attention by the financial industry, for that matter. So this first slide represents all the elements that we're about in the context of bringing life solutions to the community. And just to give you a brief background, this is what I'm going to talk about. First, we're going to talk about the team that's involved in Emeryville. I did commit to you previously that we're going to hire locally, and we're definitely on that track. And I'll show you some clear evidence of that. Then I'm going to give you a little background about our accomplishments in the context of the storefront. We wanted to sort of start the storefront and get some traction as far as what the community likes and dislikes about our presence within the community before we came back and requested on-site consumption. And we learned quite a bit about the community in the context of our soft opening and now the actual opening over the past few months. Then I'll talk a little bit about what our plans are. Biru showed you a brief view of it. I actually have some visualization of the finished product in the way that we're going to run it. And then we'll talk a little bit about the regulatory compliance. And what's near and dear to our heart is the safety and security of individuals and the community members. And then I'll talk a little bit about the community involvement that we've launched into already. So as far as the team is involved, I bring most of my background into the mix from government as it relates to compliance. And of course, technology and finance are one of my sweet spots. I have Rob Fong, who's one of my partners in the mix, and he's a former city council in Sacramento, city council member and a trial attorney, and very accomplished individual in the context of the credibility that he brings to the table within our operational capacity. Then my son Dar, who I mentioned already, runs the general operations and handles all of the supply channel. He basically manages the entire vertical integration up and down the state with a keen interest in the city of Emeryville so that our therapeutic perspective is successful. Then we have Will Brewer, who is currently running our shop and does a great job in the context of managing the sales floor and interacting with customers. If you look at our reviews on Leafly and Weed Maps, you'll see that Will is doing a great job working the situation and making sure that the community is looked after. Andrew Ramirez runs our marketing and fulfillment, and he's doing an exceptional job making sure that our reach is getting deep into the respective communities for the folks in the community to know that now there's a dispensary permitted, licensed in city of Emeryville, so that they don't have to rely on illicit and underground market for cannabis. Beth Rodriguez handles our research and admin operations, and basically is sort of the backbone of our operational capacity, running all of the administrative realities and working with the BCC to make sure that all of our regulatory compliance is attended to. Laura Herrera, who just recently joined us, handles all of our therapeutic operations, and she's exceptionally experienced and very up to speed in the context of bringing realities around CBD and THC to the community so that folks have a sense of knowledge and understanding about what cannabis can and cannot do. And Emily, who is our art expert, if any of you get a chance to come by, you'll know right off the bat, because she wears all these nice colors on her hair and colorful shoes and clothes, and she's basically handling all of our coordination within the art community. And she also handles our event management. The murals that Miro showed you have been coordinated by her with the local artists that she brought into the mix. So in terms of our accomplishments, we promised sort of an Apple Store format as far as our storefront is concerned, and that's exactly what you see in the bottom left corner. So we basically don't have the DMV or the bank teller format, where you stand in line and then you get service after waiting in line. In our particular operational metaphor, you walk in, it's an open space, somebody greets you and directs you to either go to a table that has iPads to look at our menu and gain some education. In fact, on the tables that you see in that picture, we have a lot of therapeutic information, whereby the information shows you what cannabis on the CBD and THC is about, and there's a human body that essentially identifies what the impact of each cannabis properties and components have on your body. And as the second picture shows, we have a commitment to art, and in fact are using murals inside the facility, and that's gradually going to make its way to the outside of the building as we develop our operational scenario. The room that you see in the center is a vendor room, the green, the one that's painted inside, and that's one of our vendor partners. We have those rooms in our storefront that are dedicated to vendors to come and educate our community and customers about what products they have and the realities associated with that. So we are offering those rooms to our cannabis partners in City of Emeryville. Thunderstorm, Kikoko, they're all basically expressing interest to partner with us and leverage one of those rooms in order to expand the knowledge base about their particular products. As I mentioned, our focus is therapeutic, so we do have a couple of rooms in the storefront dedicated to consultation regarding that, and those rooms are maintained private, so that if somebody wants to come in and have some conversation with our therapeutic consultants, they can do it behind closed doors without any public scenarios. We are very committed to working with local businesses. In fact, Broken Rack, we collaborate with Maryland constantly in the context of catering food for our community meetings and different activities that we conduct. And we work very effectively together to share and make sure that our respective customers are attended to as far as access to parking, security. We have security guards that patrol all the parking lots right now. And as promised before, they are patrolling the Powell Street Bridge. We started that about a couple of weeks ago, hired a couple more folks, and we are routinely during the evening hours, especially when it gets dark, patrolling the Powell Street Bridge to make sure that folks that are staying at the hotels are comfortable about taking a 5-minute walk to the other side and enjoy Broken Rack, Honor Bar, or our facility for that matter. Of course, down below in the right side is yours truly at the Bay Street event. So we had a booth and a tent, took some drones out, combined the whole thing, and got significant attention. A lot of folks were coming up trying to figure out if we're going to deliver cannabis with drones, and we told them no, that's just another separate part of our operation, and that really piqued a lot of interest. So as far as the proposed site is concerned, as Miro pointed out, the proposed site for on-site consumption is at 5745 Paladue. It's about a 3,500 square foot space that we're going to dedicate to this. It's a very high traffic scenario, and a lot of folks that come to our facility, they keep saying location, location, location. So we have a very, we're very blessed in the context of the fact that we landed there, and the proximity to Highway 80 and the entire community of Emeryville is just amazing. We do have 18 dedicated. We also secured all the parking spaces at 1475 Powell Street. So after 5 p.m., we basically have that entire parking facility available to us on contract. And we share that with our partners at Broken Rack and in some cases with Honor Bar. The Powell Street is also, as I mentioned, available as a sort of a 5-minute walk across to the other side. And we are in a transit hub area, so there's clear access to public transportation. And in that context, we're going to start launching some campaign about increasing the foot traffic, but also creating some presence so that folks that are stuck in rush hour, they can come and spend a little time at our on-site consumption and release some stress and before they hit the road. And I'll explain to you, our operational scenario in the package that we presented is focused on low THC. We don't want folks to come in and get high and then hit the road. Because we are a therapeutic operation, most of our focus is going to be around CBD, the non-psychoactive, and even if we introduce the psychoactive scenario, it will be very low THC so that the consumption of psychoactive cannabis is reduced on site. But in the context of delivering it or folks picking it up, we open that aspect of it up to whatever the industry potencies allow. So the proposed area, as Miro mentioned, 3,500 square feet, no tenant improvements. The place was basically appears to have been a perfect fit for what we're trying to do. Griffles was in that particular space before. They had that particular space designated for a lab. So it's already got a significant amount of ventilation technology and ductwork to where we don't really even have to dig into any of that. We are planning to, of course, upgrade the flooring and paint the place so that it looks nice and presentable, and you'll see a view of how we envision the on-site consumption and the vaping and smoking rooms to be developed. So we are going to seal the rooms that are dedicated to vaping and smoking. We are not going to be like a traditional hash house, is what I heard. We're not going to have smoke rooms that are just all over the place. We want our lounge to be sort of a high-end juice bar / coffee shop. We want folks that just want to deal with CBD and they don't want to have to deal with any smoke to come in and deal with zero smoke. And that's the kind of ventilation and filtration technology that we're going to implement. So basically the filtration technology is called a dual carbon. So what we'll do is just immediately suck up within a split second any type of a vape or cannabis flower smell or smoke that may be hidden in the air. And also, as I'm sure you know, in casinos like Tahoe and Las Vegas and such, when you open the door, there's this forced air that prevents any penetration of air between two spaces. So we're going to implement that kind of a scenario as well to make sure that not only the dual carbon is doing the job, but also forced air, making sure that there's no smoke or odor in the context of that is penetrating the lounge area. So as a result of that, we're committing to a 0% secondhand smoke in the context of the lounge area. Our hours of operation at this point are planned for 12 to 10 p.m., which is currently the opening hours for our storefront. At some point, we might increase our hours We do get a lot of demand by the community, believe it or not, in the morning hours on the storefront side. So we may at some point extend the hours for the storefront, but on the lounge and vaping and smoking in the area, we're pretty sure that that's going to remain our hours from 12 to 10 p.m. So this is sort of a sneak preview of what we're planning on. It may not be exactly as you see it in the pictures, but it will be somewhat of a similar atmosphere and environment. When I said high end, we definitely mean that. I mentioned before during the storefront CUP that we're going to do sort of a high-end Apple store, and that's what we basically brought to bear. And we're going to do exactly the same in the sense of the lounge and the vaping and smoking area. So on the lounge side, we're going to focus juice bar, tea, cannabis tea, and other edibles. And we are not going to do any food prep on site, but we are going to work with Maryland and Broken Rack in the context of developing sort of a healthy menu items, such as salads and vegetarian type dishes that make sense, and then bring those over to our site for on-site consumption. And then we'll have sauces, salad dressings and such that have both a mix of CBD and THC embedded in them. We're going to do major campaigns to bring tourists and commuters, as I mentioned, to the table so that they can enjoy the facility. We are going to reach out to the community of 21 plus in the area. We are already getting calls by corporates in the area, believe it or not, that want to come to our facility to do offsites because they know that the place has got a lot of room, sort of a well-designed facility. And I believe they have more of a therapeutic aspect and perspective about it. As a part of the lounge, we are going to conduct yoga sessions as an example, so that it attracts the more therapeutic aspect of the situation. We are going to do some clean comedy potentially, so that the folks that are enjoying our lounge area will have some fun in the process of that. And of course, as a part of our commitment to the art community, we're going to have artists come in. In fact, the fellow that did the murals, he's a professor of art, believe it or not, and we're going to have art education center sessions within our lounge. And then on the purification side, I already basically mentioned that. So the picture on the left is sort of an existing representation of our on-site consumption. The picture that Mira showed you has a ping pong table, so we're going to have some ping pong tables and have some potential ping pong matches. Beth Rodriguez that I mentioned is a former youth Olympian in ping pong, so we're going to challenge folks that come to go against her. So the center picture is a representation of what our lounge is going to look like, the juice bar and the tea bar that I mentioned. And then I'm sorry.
Including the windows?
Well, no, not the windows, of course. So that's that part, I did mention that you're not going to get exactly what's on the picture, but yeah, the windows are not included because the place is actually inside the facility with no window present.
How about video monitors that look like windows?
Oh, yeah, there you go. In fact, murals, a couple of the murals that we may have in there will have sort of a window-like design to them. And then the picture on the right is sort of a round table that we have in mind for the vaping and smoking area of the facility. As far as regulatory compliance, we are clearly in compliance with the distance buffers, both at the state and local level. Our use is consistent with the Emeryville Municipal Code, and we are definitely within what's considered to be walkable destinations of City of Emeryville. And as mentioned, we are committed to build out the Powell Street Bridge at the underpass and develop that whole area with murals, and we're also planning to install a security system on the actual bridge. We already launched the patrolling of it via our security. So every half hour, we're basically monitoring that with our security staff, and our security staff are taking pictures. If there's somebody that's sort of parked in a weird way, they approach them and inquire why that is. So we're basically trying to raise awareness about our presence across that entire stretch of walking, so that the community takes notice, feels comfortable about using that. And we're gradually approaching the local hotels, Four Points, Hyatt House, and Hyatt Place, to let them know about what we're trying to do, and the fact that the opportunity is open for their guests. We're actually approaching them to say that we are going to commit to no delivery of cannabis within our delivery hours to the hotels. But what we would like to do is offer their guests a free shuttle to our on-site vaping and smoking. So we are going to acquire these fancy shuttles and make them available to hotel guests rather than deliver cannabis, smokables to them. We want them to come to our facility. As far as the deliveries to hotels, we are seeing significant movement in the context of some of the high-end hotels moving towards CBD. So if you Google CBD and hotels, you'll see a lot of developments in that area. Some of the hotels in Southern California, in states that have legalized cannabis, are now really starting to leverage CBD solutions as a part of their menu structure. So we're offering those scenarios to our local hotels in the context of a partnership with them. So safety and security, as I mentioned, is very important to us, and we got cameras all over the place. These cameras are high-tech with facial recognition from 100 feet away. So we can basically catch license plates, faces, capture who it is, which is basically a state requirement in the context of establishing a credible and safe operational scenario. We do have a 24/7 monitoring entity, Protection One, and we have zero tolerance for loitering. We see garbage thrown, and every once in a while there's stuff on the ground, and our security guards go around and pick them up to the best that they can. And we also have maintenance folks that show up 3 times a week, and we make sure that they not only clean up inside the facility, but also go around and pick up all the garbage that may be laying out in the sidewalks and such. As far as community involvement, so Charlie mentioned 5700 Horton. The Emeryville Celebration of Arts is really going to be at our facility. In the back, we have a 20,000 square foot place that is going to be targeted for some drone racing operation later, starting in November, December timeframe. For the month of October, we have donated that space to Emory Arts so that they can basically set up shop. They're, in fact, they're every day now. Make me move everything out at 7 o'clock so they can bring their crew in. And they're setting up the place in order to establish the logistics for the art exhibit that's going to launch on October 5th. So hope to see you all over there so that we can all enjoy the local artists' accomplishments. And then we are going to, beyond just the celebration of arts, we are going to have fundraisers for at that facility itself to raise money to develop the City Walk, the Powell Street underbridge. So we're going to have fundraisers inside our facilities, and then we're going to orchestrate fundraisers under the Powell Street Bridge as well, so that folks can come and see the before and then visualize what the after is going to look like in order to help contribute to that cause. We are going to hold regular community meetings and let the community know that our first one was in fact for this particular CUP and nobody showed up, but we're going to maintain diligence in that regard and invite folks every once in a while to come to our facility and learn about our progress and our contributions to the community and the good and the bad of cannabis. There's not only a lot of good about cannabis, but as it relates to youth, it can definitely alter the mind if they're not careful about it. So we do have outreach. In fact, Rob runs our nonprofit operation that's focused on outreach and education to school kids so that they know about the damaging impact of cannabis, peer pressure, the whole 9 yards. We do have an artist incubation program, so we are allowing artists to come in and not only do their art within our facility, but also put it up for sale, so that as clients come through, they see their work of art, and the pricing will be on it, the name and contact information of the artist will also be on it. And as a part of our community contributions, we committed with the storefront CUP to the 1%. To ECAP and 1% of staff time, and the same holds true for our on-site consumption. As far as our social engagement, mentioned the nonprofit that Rob runs. We do have an incubator program that is focused on targeting underground illicit operators and bringing them into the mix. That's predominantly set up on the delivery side. So we invite them to come in. We've had a couple of applicants that expressed an interest, but haven't had anybody that just leaped in there and wants to come in and do it yet. Because right now, Prop 215 is still prevalent, so a lot of those operators are operating under the collective Prop 215 model, but that sunsets at the end of 2018. So we expect, come 2019, the folks that are operating in that mode either will have to shut down or legalize. At that point, I think this thing will pick up some steam, and we'll get a couple of folks that are right now in the delivery spectrum jump on our bandwagon and leverage our incubator model. And under that particular program, we're offering brand new vehicle funding, retrofitted on the vehicle on with 360-degree cameras and all the technology bells and whistles such as GPS, the whole 9 yards. So we basically want to move them into the legalization effort with a sense of security and entrepreneurship. Funding is offered. As I mentioned, Rob is a former attorney, city council member, so he's very up to speed about the permitting and licensing aspect, and all of that will be available to folks that want to join us under our incubator program. We do sponsor a lot of educational scenarios for safe access to cannabis. And we educate them about the presence of illicit market in the context of the fact that products may not be tested. That aspect is a big enforcement issue for local and state entities. And of course, as a part of our nonprofit, we do significant amount of outreach up and down the state for that matter. We're gradually moving in that direction within the Emeryville community as we scale our operation, but that particular aspect of our operational capacity is already in motion in Sacramento and some of the Southern California locations. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present, and we can, I guess, address your questions at the moment.
Yes, thank you for the thorough presentation. At this point, I want to open up the floor for any commissioners that have any questions for the applicant. I'll start with Commissioner Thompson.
No questions, thanks.
Commissioner Donaldson?
No.
Any questions there? Commissioner Keller?
I do have kind of a simple question, or not so much. You addressed a lot of this. I was very concerned in the beginning. You may not know I'm a regional asset manager for UC Berkeley, and I manage 15 buildings. 2 of my buildings, one is a very intense lab building, so I'm familiar with engineering air transfers and et cetera. So I was glad to hear that you're saying the vape rooms were previously laboratories. So I know that they must have some boosted capacity for air exchange. You have supply. So the question I had is, each of the rooms that you have that are going to be isolated, they each have their own supply and exhaust?
Yes.
Okay. And so
we're going to enhance them even further with the dual carbon technology. One will be within the room, and then the other one will be
in the ducting,
barely on the exit of the actual odor.
The exhaust, yeah. And so what it sounds like is that you guys are actually going to create negative pressure in each of those rooms. Okay, so that will keep any vape, that when the doors open, things won't exit the room. Actually, more air will be sucked in at the time, drawing out more air. Okay, because I was real concerned. I was just seeing existing rooms, and I'm thinking a standard room, especially in a warehouse environment, does not really have what I felt was needed for this. But it sounds like if it's a previous lab environment and that equipment is still there and you're going to make use of that and boost that up, I'm pretty satisfied that you're going to have enough air exchange to keep that place pretty clean.
For sure.
Okay.
Saving us thousands of dollars worth of retrofit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thanks.
All right, I don't have any questions at this point.
Okay.
At this time, I want to open up for any public hearing is open. and ask that there are any audience members that would like to comment on this item. All right, seeing none, we have public hearing is closed. All right, so now we're going to bring it back to the commission for deliberation, and this time I'll start over on this side with Commissioner Keller.
I'm really thankful. I wandered into your location right after your soft opening. I mean, it was maybe, we were out just, my husband and I were just kind of out walking the neighborhood as we often do, and thought, wow, this place is open already. And you guys were like, really, the security council wasn't there yet or anything, so I'm going to have to pay a visit again because it looked really sparse. I was going, man, I hope this isn't what it's going to look like. So, but it was right, I think, 2 or 3 days after you had your original opening. So I'm really happy to see that you guys are advancing. And I'm glad the patrols have started on the Powell Street Bridge. That's a real concern for people, and I think having that a little bit safer, and then if we find that's working, maybe we can work with the city to get some lighting improved there. And so I'm really excited about what you're doing there. And I said before when we talked about the cannabis retailers, I really look at cannabis as alcohol now. It's pretty much on the same plateau for me, and I think the outlets and the delivery system is kind of like a liquor store, and what you're proposing now is like a cocktail lounge or a bar. And so that's the lens I look at this through, and I think, with the special conditions of, ventilation stuff that we discussed about. So I think you guys are really doing a great program. I'm excited to see what you come up with. And it's just the one concern I have is as people drink at bars and they get in their car and leave. I'm having that kind of same concern, but it sounds like you guys are working on programs to abate that as best as possible at your point. So I'm excited and interested to see what evolves.
Thank you. We have Commissioner Donaldson.
I think it was interesting to hear that part of the reason that you were selected was that you had proposed a consumption lounge, so that's good background information to have. I was curious about how the ventilation and the performance standards were going to work to keep things confined. I'm also curious about how it's going to work to have people in close proximity. There's no alcohol or tobacco for sale on your facility, but you're across the street from a couple of bars where people can go and drink too. So I hope that that's not problematic, but I don't have any, I think that the operator's permit will probably address what's going on, and that your security, does your security deal with people who are coming from one place to the other to see whether, just in the sense of how compromised somebody's ability to get around could be?
In terms of if they're intoxicated or not?
Yeah.
Yes, we definitely double check on all of that. As I mentioned, we're focused on making sure anyone that enters our facility doesn't leave at risk to themselves or to the community for that matter. So we'll definitely be screening that aspect of it, in particular when on-site consumption goes live. We are acutely aware of the dilemmas when you cross cannabis, the THC aspect of it, with liquor or alcohol, which is precisely why we are proposing the low THC scenario as it relates to the on-site consumption. So as mentioned before, our predominant focus is therapeutic. We want folks to come in, that the CBD aspect of the solution is clearly been researched and is proven to have that feel-good effort, deal with muscle pain, joint pain. So in that context, I think the community, to be honest, we're getting constant question and we're being asked by the community, elders for that matter too, about when we're going to open up our on-site consumption so that they can come and enjoy not only the social aspects of what we're planning to implement, but also not have to spend so much money. Cannabis prices have gone up significantly because of the state taxes and such. Luckily, we don't have any taxes yet in Emeryville, and we use that as a marketing element to say zero taxes for now. But nonetheless, that really, because of the regulatory scenarios, prices have gone up, and a lot of folks that don't want to spend that much money, they will come to our facility and just get a portion of it and pay the corresponding price. It's like somebody that, doesn't want to buy a six-pack. We'll go to a bar and have a beer. So we're going to implement that aspect of a cannabis scenario and provide that financially sensitive program to the local community.
Yeah, I don't have any other.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Yeah, I'm encouraged also what your business brings to the community, so it's great to see that. And I think in reviewing this application, the thing is I clearly saw that this was an intended component of the project and that you had to get the operator's permit and then you had to apply for this. So this seemed like a very natural progression through the process of, legalization and setting up the business. So from that aspect, I didn't have any problem with it. And I think in terms of just, clarifying the ventilation elements, I appreciated that. And then my question about delivery, looking for the sort of the minor things that can hook into the community. And I think you're addressing them well. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So my comments, I think that you did a great job showing us what the ventilation system would look like, so thank you for that. That was a big concern. I really want to applaud you for opening up your space for the art show. Thank you. That shows your commitment right away to the community involvement, and so that's great to see. I'm excited to be there next Friday. And in terms of outreach for community events, I want to encourage you to use Nextdoor. We have a really active community here, and so if you haven't started to use that social media platform, there are people that watch that and may be really interested in learning more about your business, and that might be a great way to reach them. And lastly, we talked about bike parking for the last applicant, and I remember that being part of your proposal when you came to us the first time. So I'm really looking for that bike parking in the future. I'd love to be able to come to your business and park my bike without it being on a pole. Please.
So this has been a long journey on the bicycle parking part. Mm-hmm. So we contracted with the entity that has worked with the city of Emeryville, so they are very up to speed about the city's standards and all the scenarios that are important to the city. Unfortunately, they had a backlog, so we've been working with them very actively, and they just committed to a delivery of the bike racks by the coming week to 1st of October.
Excellent.
So by the time the art event is over, we'll have the bike racks available for the community to use.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my comments. All right, so at this point, is there anybody that would like to make a motion?
I'd make a motion to approve.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
So we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Keller and seconded by Commissioner Thompson. Can we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Donaldson?
Aye.
Commissioner Keller?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
Commissioner Young is recused. Vice Chair Guerrero?
Aye.
4 ayes. The application is approved. This decision may be appealed to the City Council within 15 days.
All right. So we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, and that is item 8.3. This is a general plan amendment to increase the maximum development potential on a portion of San Pablo Avenue. And we have a presentation here from Maru.
Okay, so this is a city-initiated project regarding the San Pablo General Plan and Planning Regulations Amendment. The reason for the proposed amendment is that on April of last year, the City Council designated 4300 San Pablo Avenue as an affordable senior rental housing development and authorized staff to issue a request for qualifications/proposals, and this is a city-owned property. This was consistent with the 2015-2023 housing element of our general plan that identified this city-owned property as a possible site for affordable housing. At the city's pre-bid meeting in May of last year, several potential developers expressed concern that given the existing maximum density and FAR on the site, it was not possible to design a project that would be financially be viable. Staff looked at the general plan designations in the vicinity of this site and noted that the parcels across the site on the western side of San Pablo Avenue were designated with higher development potential as expressed by their FAR, density, and height. So in order to accommodate a senior housing development on a city-owned property and make development regulations consistent on both sides of San Pablo Avenue, staff is proposing this general plan amendment to modify the FAR density and height maps. And as these maps are also in planning regulations, it will also necessitate an amendment to the regulations as well. But essentially, it's the maps that we are changing. So in terms of the area of concern, the one in red with a crosshatch is the impacted parcels. It's about 2.5 acres site, just to zero in a little bit. So this is the parcels, about 2.5 acres. This little gray area is the city site, which is a little less than half an acre. City parcels. So what is going to be changing is that each development criteria, one is density, residential density, other is floor area ratio, and the third one is height. The existing is going to be raised by one level up, and this will become easier to explain in these figures. So this one is the maximum floor area. So the area of change of what we are proposing to change is these parcels, and they are changing from 1.10 to 1.5. So it's just the next category over. The same thing is for the heights. Again, these are the parcels that are going to be affected, and they get increased from 30 to 40 as base, and obviously 55 and 75 are the maximum with a bonus. Yes.
While you're on the map, I just want to get a clarification. So in the oval, the blue color is what we're proposing to go up to.
Correct.
And
so
everything,
this would be, yeah.
And everything in that same color on this map is currently existing at that.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So and that's for each map.
Okay.
Again, this is the density. The same thing. The parcels to be impacted are ones in the black circle, and they're going to go from 3560 to 5000. So that's the line here. So it used to be the lighter color, and now it's this. So this would be the final map if the commission and the council approve this general plan amendment. An EIR was prepared by the city in conjunction with when we updated our general plan back in 2009. As this proposed project will result in a slight increase in development potential from what was analyzed in the EIR, an addendum to the EIR was prepared, and that was attached to your staff report. The addendum concludes that the proposed GPA and the planning regulations amendment will not result in any new or substantially more severe impacts than those identified in the 2009, and therefore no supplemental CEQA environmental review is required in addition to the addendum. So there are a bunch of general plan amendment findings that need to be made. These have been outlined in detail in the resolution. And these are the planning regulations amendment findings, which are consistent with the general plan amendment findings. And these, again, have been outlined in your resolution. We believe that these findings can be made, and these revised plans are attached to the resolution. So with that, we recommend that the commission approve the proposed general plan and the planning regulations amendment, and recommend that the city council approve these amendments. In terms of next steps, if the commission does recommend approval, it will go to the council on October 30th. 30th. And after that, and if the council approves the amendments, then the Economic Development and Housing staff will then reissue their RFQ for to develop a senior housing center at 4300 San Pablo. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Thank you, Maru. All right, we're going to open up the floor for any questions from the commission, and we'll start with Commissioner Young.
No questions.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yeah, I do have a question, Maru. I was noticing that there was, that the designation didn't go to the backs of lot lines, that it was a distance inboard. What was the thinking behind that?
Essentially, we're trying to line up So there are certain parcels which kind of, which will get divided up between two different designations.
So they'll have two different density
Yeah.
allowability. Did you,
Which-
go ahead, I mean,
Let me take a stab at that.
sure.
These maps are from the general plan. It's a little bit of a conundrum because the general plan is intended to be general. And so it kind of has sort of like bubble diagrams, but we also use it in a regulatory way because those same maps get incorporated by reference into the zoning ordinance. And the way those lines are drawn in the general plan, it's not really in a precise location, but if you actually measure it on the map, you find that it's approximately 120 feet east of the east line of San Pablo Avenue. So that's, it just goes up in a line that lines up with the way it was drawn originally in the general plan, and it does cut through some parcels.
And does that, for an individual property owner, does that have implications?
There is a rule in the zoning regulation, in the planning regulations about that. It says for lots that are split by either a zone boundary or an FAR boundary or a height boundary or whatever, the entire site can be considered to be in the higher district, provided that the line has to be moved no more than 50 feet and at least 50% of the parcel is already in the higher district. So in most of these cases, that probably wouldn't apply.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Thank you. Do you have any more questions there, Commissioner Thompson?
Not at this time.
Okay. Or have questions here from Commissioner Donaldson?
I think that the thing that concerns me here is the relationship. I think San Pablo Avenue is a great place for density and for increased for housing and that, but
Commissioner Donaldson, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is the time for us to have
Right, no, I
questions.
have
This
a
is question.
question.
Okay.
So what concerns me is the height transition. So I'm wondering whether the FAR and the residential density that are proposed can be accommodated without raising the height to 75 feet.
Well, I'm not sure about that. Are FAR and residential density and height categories
They all sort of go together.
are
right?
designed to kind of go together so you don't end up with dwelling units that are unreasonably small or a building envelope that isn't big enough to accommodate the density or whatever. I would point out that in our planning regulations, we do have criteria for if two height districts meet, that the higher height district, the building has to step down at a 45-degree angle to the lower height district at the property line. So if you had to say a 30-foot district here and a maximum 75-foot district next to it, the 75-foot tall building has to go down at a 45-degree angle to 30 feet at the lot line.
Okay.
I don't know if that addresses your concern, but
Well, I did actually sort of have a question about a three-dimensional analysis. I know there's obviously that housing, the affordable housing proposal that is driving some of this, and the idea that, this is a major urban design boulevard, and the idea that you'd have the similar heights look on either side, those are all good things. But I too wondered whether there'd been any sort of three-dimensional analysis that you could actually see how it's affecting the backside.
not as part of the CEQA review. I would say that the properties that are affected are on the east side of San Pablo from 40th to about 175 feet south of 45th Street. Along that stretch, there are really only two areas that are likely to develop. The Oak Walk project between 40th and 41st was just built a few years ago. It's not likely that anything different is going to be proposed there in the foreseeable future. So that property would probably not, as a practical matter, wouldn't really be affected by this change. North, of course, the city's property at the corner of 43rd and San Pablo is definitely affected by it. That's why we're doing this. Immediately to the north of that is another senior housing project owned by the city, the Emeryville project. That's not going anywhere anytime soon either. So the only other property besides the city's property at 4300 San Pablo that would really be affected by this is the Bank of America and Oaks Club parking lot, which in my personal opinion is ripe for some kind of high-density mixed-use development. Any such development that would be proposed there obviously would have to come to the Planning Commission for approval and would have SEQA review. So we would do that three-dimensional analysis at that time. I would say right now the three-dimensional analysis is essentially what I said, that it's required to step down at 45 degrees. And also I would point out that this added height only applies within that 120-foot strip. So if you have a site like, say, the Bank of America parking lot that goes much deeper than that, the 30-foot height limit applies over most of that site, and it's only the first 120 feet on San Pablo that would be affected by the higher height, and even that part wouldn't be a full 120 feet because it has to step down at a 45-degree angle at the point where the two zones meet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any more questions, Commissioner Donaldson?
No, that's my main.
Okay. Commissioner Keller? No questions. I don't have any questions at this point. And so we're going to open up the public hearing. Are there any members of the audience that would like to speak on behalf of this item? Excellent. So I'm going to remind you that you have 3 minutes to give public comment.
How many minutes?
3 minutes. And after you're done, sir, if you can sign in here in the sheet to your right, that's what we ask. All right. Thank you.
So my name is Jeffrey Dupuis. I'm the manager at 1086 41st Street. Been the manager there since 1973. It's been a while since I've been before the Planning Commission. I was very active during the Oak Walk development, not entirely welcomed by the staff.
Project came out much better.
Pardon me?
Project came out much better.
Yes, I was about to say, after all of that, it turned out perhaps the input resulted in a better project. In any case, 1086 41st Street is a rooming house, or the current term is SRO. I've been manager there since 1973. I call it a rooming house. It was called a rooming house when I arrived there in 1973, so I tend to continue calling it that. It's low-income housing, probably the lowest in Emeryville, and we have a very stable tenant population there compared to most of the high-rent places that you see in Emeryville. So we're on that block between 41st and 43rd, where the Bank of America is, and we're right next to the Oaks Club parking lot, to the east of the Oaks Club parking lot. We would hate to see a 75-foot building put up right next to us, even with the 45-degree cut down of the height to our side. It would not be good for our tenant base there. And if that block were to be developed, it would be kind of silly to leave our project there, our building there, in the middle of nowhere between basically between the school and a brand new project. So I'm a little bit concerned about it. On the other hand, even though Director Bryant thinks that block is prime for development, so far as I know, I don't think the Oaks Club is interested in developing it, but if they are, I'd be very interested to know about it. Any word about that? Is there any proposed development on that block? Anyway, I just want to mention those concerns. We've been there for a long time. I've been there for a long time. The tenants have been there for a long time. The building's been there for a very, very long time. And I'm not opposing or endorsing this upzoning. I understand that the reason why our block is being upzoned is because you're not allowed to do pocket zoning.
All right, that's our time, sir. Thank you for your comments tonight. Can you sign in here in the sheet to your right? Thank you. All right. Is there anybody else here in the audience that has any comments about this agenda item? All right. See none. Public hearing is closed. We're going to return back to the commission for deliberation. And I'm going to begin with Commissioner Keller.
I don't really have a lot to say. I understand there's always concern when we're upzoning or changing the scale and dynamics of a neighborhood. Problem being is our population is growing and expanding. The Bay Area is very expensive, and having a mother who's 90 years old who's on a very fixed income, senior housing for these type of people is critical. It's not just important, it's critical. We do live in an urban area, so places are going to get built up that aren't built up today. So I'm particularly sensitive to people who have been in Emeryville for a long time, and they've seen a lot of changes, but when that change comes to your front door, it becomes very visceral, almost very personal. But we have to look at a broader picture of what we need, and San Pablo throughout the East Bay is prime in every city for redevelopment. It's a major transportation corridor. It gets anyone almost anywhere they need to be. So I think considering the way we're going to step any projects down in that neighborhood and et cetera, I think it's kind of a compromise in the best of two worlds that we can get. So I'm in support of this.
Thank you. We're going to move on to Commissioner Donaldson.
Yeah, my concern is still for the adjacent 1- and 2-story buildings behind this line, and understanding that anything has to come to us for review. I'm looking at it and looking at the depth of the lot, and at a 45-degree angle, it seems like something could only be 75 feet in the first 75 feet of the area there. So there's 45 feet that would be at least a division, if not a setback. So considering that anything that would come to us would have to have design review, I think I'm okay with it, because I recognize that we have an incredible housing crunch. We have an incredible affordability crunch, and any place that we can provide affordable housing in the city is really, really important.
Commissioner Thompson?
Sure. Yeah, no, I am in support of this generally. I do think, and my question really about the three-dimensional analysis, I do think that is important to consider the adjacencies on the backside, but in terms of having a consistent density on a major boulevard, I think this is the right place to do that in terms of supporting the senior housing proposal, and that's a great opportunity as well. So I would support this.
Commissioner Young.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at the, so the area would be blocked off, and I understand those stepping how it would actually be set back, and you get to increase, and you get a lot of extra square footage and floor area ratio uses based on this increased amount of space in both density and height. And I'm just somewhat reminded a little bit about, you know, when we eventually get to some of these increase in, if you go, I think on, I think it's University Avenue in Berkeley, they've increased basically all those buildings on the sides of this, going up to campus, and they allowed the heights to change from some, I guess it's some distance to almost 100 feet or something like this, and then the next thing you know is that it got really developed, and so now you're noticing that it actually changes the character of what old University Avenue in Berkeley kind of looks like. So just as I would see this is a good core, this would be a really good place for this to happen, as long as that we basically look at exactly what these blockages would look like. I think it's a good idea. So I think make it smart. So.
Thank you. All right, my final thoughts. I'm in full support of this amendment. I would like to thank the gentleman for coming to speak about the SRO. I value you and our community, and would like to see that continue here. And so I don't believe that this amendment would adversely affect your residents, and I think it contributes to the betterment of our community by increasing the housing stock. And so those are my final thoughts about the amendments. At this point, looking for a motion from our commissioners.
I would motion that we approve this.
I'll make a second.
All right, we have a motion to approve as written by Commissioner Young and seconded by Commissioner Keller. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Donaldson?
Aye.
Commissioner Keller?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
Commissioner Young?
Aye.
Vice Chair Herrero?
Aye.
5 ayes. The recommendation is approved. We will forward your recommendation to the City Council, and as Miru said, that will be heard on October 30th. Again, this is both a general plan amendment and a planning regulation amendment, because the maps are in both. The general plan amendment is by resolution of the City Council. The planning regulation amendment is by ordinance. So the resolution and ordinance will both be heard on October 30th, and then the ordinance will come back for second reading on whatever the meeting in November is. I think it's the 13th.
And then, because there is an RFP idea out there already, what are the timeframes?
I believe the intent is that after the council does the first reading of the ordinance, which will give a signal that they're endorsing this, that we would then go forward with the RFP. I don't know if Chad wants to add anything to that. He's been quietly observing from the back, make sure this goes smoothly.
Well, that's correct. That's basically it. Once first reading is done, we will make the minor revisions we need to make to the RFQP, and we will put it back out for at least a 30-day period, and then go through that evaluation process of those proposals.
Okay.
Thank you, Chad. All right. So at this point, I want to open it up to the next item 9 for our planning commissioner comments or updates. Commissioner, does anybody have any? Yes, Commissioner Keller.
I just want to express my appreciation to the commission for indulging me on our first item on the agenda. As you could probably tell, I was quite passionate about that, so I appreciate you all listening and hearing me out on that.
Always good to have a discussion.
Yes, yes. And that's kind of where I felt we kind of did a little bit more than we usually do, but I felt this was the time to do that, and it's public and proper, and so I tend to get a little passionate about those things, but I appreciate your indulgence.
Thank you. Are there any more updates or comments?
Oh, I just want to say it was really a fun night. I thought I too was really kind of felt very passionate about buildings, and while being someone who really likes new development, and but as long as it makes sense to people, and I think that's my biggest message. And I think we're in a area where everything's really going up. It's beyond costs are just skyrocketing. Space is gone. I think it's really smart. We just really now put our heads together and really think how this stuff is going to come out. So I think it's kind of cool. Thank you, Mayor, for that. There you go.
Thank you, Commissioner Young. All right. I have a final announcement. I've been invited to participate in the I-80 Ashby Avenue Interchange Improvement Project. And so the first meeting for that stakeholder meeting will be October 10th. At the next Planning Commission meeting, I'll come with updates with what happened at that meeting. That's my update.
Okay. I do have one question. Is there any progress on the Nady property?
There is some. We have met with them several times, and there is a developer who is in contract now. It's called AmCal. And we hope to be moving forward with demolition within the next couple of months.
Wow.
And then after that, of course, with construction of the entitled building, not sure how long that will take. There is some cleanup that has to be done that's being overseen by the Alameda County Department of Environmental Health. So yes, I mean, there's no visible progress. If you go by the site, we are painfully aware of that. Yeah. But we are meeting regularly, and things are happening behind the scenes, and hopefully you'll see some change in the not too distant future.
Oh, that's great news.
That's good to hear.
So this is actual viable project that's happening.
Well, it's the project that's entitled.
Right. But we're actually suing something, so what I'm concerned about is that the entitlement is going to expire, but
That could very well happen.
that could still happen. And when would that happen? When is?
March 24th, 2019.
So they've got just 5 months.
That's right.
And that means they have to pull permits by that time.
Well, we've told them the demolition permit would suffice to lock in the entitlements.
Yeah, get that thing demoed at least. I'll go for that.
All right.
Very good news. Thanks for asking, Gil.
Thank you. That said, I'd like to adjourn this meeting at 8:43.